Welcome to Melanated Conversations, our narrative from our perspective.
Here on the podcast, we are amplifying the voices of Black women and sharing their powerful stories of transformation.
I'm Adrianne.
And I'm Yana. Let's start the show.
Welcome back to another episode of Melanated Conversations. I'm your co-host, Yana.
And I'm your co-host, Adrianne.
Y'all are in for a treat today. I don't know if y'all can kind of hear it. Like, we're already having such a good time with our new cousin and a guest at this point. We're full on family at this point. But we are going to be bringing on such a phenomenal woman who's doing things in the world, not just in this little section of the U.S., but she is doing things that we'll talk about it. She's doing things that are helping us abroad as well. So I want to bring on our guest, Adrianne George. Is it Adrianne George or Adrianne Lind? I want to make sure I'm giving you the
Well, George is my maiden name and Lind is my Swedish name. So you got it. You got it. That's
welcome.
Yeah. But hey, cousins, I'm so happy to be back with you. I missed y'all.
Oh, we missed you too.
I was looking forward to tonight so much. So thank you for having me.
Yes, and you guys didn't catch that. So Adrianne is actually in. It's okay if we share.
Yeah, I'm in Sweden.
Okay. So Adrianne is in Sweden, you guys, and she stayed up for us.
Yeah,
sure did.
My cousins, I've been looking forward to this all day, and thank you. Like, you know how things are behind the scenes. Of course, my computer had to reboot, do all this stuff, and you guys were so patient, and I'm so respectful of your time. And just thank you for being gracious during these COVID times. I appreciate it. This is so important to me to be connected with you all because it's lonely over here in Sweden, I have to say. So thank you for, you guys throw me like a lifeline. This is very important to me. I appreciate that.
Well, I mean, of course, thank you for saying yes and wanting to even, have this conversation with us. And I get how you feel because, I mean, I ain't gonna
look.
This is when she said that, I was like, every book of cousins and co-see. Right.
And that, that's the power of the internet and the power of your melanated conversations that, you're all about bringing us together and amplifying our voices and giving us a platform. And I'm really, really, really have been forced to take a hard look about who stands with Black women and who doesn't. And you guys unequivocally, unapologetically, clearly, and passionately with love stand with Black women. That's why we will always be cousins. We connected just because we connected, but what you do just means so much to me. And I thought, I'm from DC. I grew up when it was like Chocolate City. I went to Howard. My parents met there, all about Black people. But I realized, once I branched out and went to Europe, it's not like everybody's doesn't get that, like we're community and that we automatically stand with each other. And that is a very touchy subject with me right now because and I don't want to be like, one of our presidents, I can't remember, he came from your state. I don't know if it was junior or senior, but it was like either you're for us or against us. And it's like, I'm kind of adopting that attitude now. If you're not standing with Black women, I don't know who you're standing for. And I'm not sure I want to stand next to you. And that's like almost, shocking to me but it's like, at this point, it's like, it's so clear to me. Either you're standing with me, and if you stand with Black women, you're standing with Asian people who are getting attacked now. Yeah. You're standing with immigrant children who are separated from their parents. It's so simple to me. If you stand with me, you're standing for humanity. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that publicly. And I'm like to the point where I'm like, what do I want to do? I want to collect Black cards. It's like, you rescind yours to give back. You know what I mean?
You repoing Black cards.
I'm calling for a repo because it's like, It's
Can
so
we be
quick,
a part of the repo clip?
I've been cool.
Can I apply for the job?
Please.
I'm saying, let's get, because to me, it's like, come on, what if you don't get it now? You know, I'll give, you know, and that's one thing about living abroad, you know, whether you're living in Europe or anywhere, you find yourself thrown into this expat community of people that you would never meet or talk to in your regular life in the States.
Yeah.
So, you know, you've got this common bond, like, okay, you're an American, you're in a different culture, we can celebrate Thanksgiving or 4th of July. But then when it comes down to like really talking about stuff, it's like, you know what? That's okay. I don't have to have 4th of July with you because you're not really my ally. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think I've learned from 2020 to now. We've collectively, the world and us, we've gone through so many things that you know, I feel like I'm going on a tangent, but I'm in so many expat groups where you're like the minority, because you're a Black expat, and you hear all these white expats talking about, oh, I'm so embarrassed of Trump, or I'm so embarrassed of America, or I can't believe they're doing that. And I'm like, excuse me, or just somebody the other day, oh, you know, all these mass shootings, which don't get me wrong, are absolutely horrible. Mm-hmm. But they're like, oh, you know, I don't feel safe in the States. I don't want to go back to this. I'm like, you know what? I can't wait to get back and see my parents. It's always been precarious and dangerous for Black people in the States.
Yes.
Since 1619. You know, I have cases for you all of a sudden in 2021 being, you know, it's like, whatever.
Yeah, no, agreed. You were saying where there's some expats that are like, I can't believe this is American all this other stuff. It's like, for us, this is always America's being who she's always been, as far as I'm concerned. You know? This is not who we are.
Yeah, and for you to say all of a sudden now, you just see you're 40, 35, 50, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I don't feel safe to go home and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you know what? When have we ever felt safe? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But this, you know, that's not going to keep me from seeing my family. We take a chance when we go to the mailbox. Not to mention to the store.
We take a chance when we're sleeping in our own bed.
In our own homes. In our own homes, we're not safe.
No.
So I don't have any patience for these white liberal people that all of a sudden are ashamed of America or this, that. I'm like, please. Those people get on my nerves the most, I think, than other people that are like, oh my God, I can't imagine how you feel.
It's one of those things, it's like you're half in. It's what, what the old people say, you're pussyfooting. You either.
Oh, see, that's one reason I love being with y'all. I don't get to hear those expressions. I know exactly pussyfooting, exactly pussyfooting around. And so I just come back and I'm like, you know, I used to be like a lurker or maybe just say positive things, but now I'm like, no passes. America's always been like that. Wake up call. Yep. Hello. So.
Agreed.
Ooh, well, Adrianne, you have gotten used to if you never say another mumbling word, you've already preached on today. But
girl, I had a hot flash. I'm having a hot flash over here with that. Now I gotta fan myself because
no, we're gonna let you cool down.
Right.
Before we get into a few of the topics today and also hear more about your background, we like to always welcome our family, our guests, with the game, because there's nothing. You're not our family if you don't play games with us. Like, that's something that it's just our thing. So we hope that you don't mind playing.
No, I love it because it's like my family too. Rising Pictionary or other stuff. It's like, yay. So what's the game?
So, Tyrion, I'm going to let you.
Of course. Have you ever played or heard of the game like One Gotta Go or One Gotta Go Forever?
Ooh, no, but I like the theme.
Okay. It's pretty simple. I throw out a couple of scenarios.
Okay.
You got to pick one that has to go forever. Okay?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay. Forever.
Forever.
Okay.
It has to go forever. So my first grouping, I only pick one.
Okay.
Getting enough sleep, having a social life, or progressing in your career. One of those has to go forever.
Okay. That's easy for me, based on my life experience, the career. Okay. And the reason I say that is because I first got married when I was 22. My husband was 24, African-American, Marine Corps officer. He was one of my good friends, very best friends, cousins. So when I met him, married him, I think we moved 3 times in 4 years or something. So I was constantly giving up a job and moving and supporting him. And amplifying his career. And I did it without even thinking about it because I was raised old school. Like, your husband is the head of the household. I can remember my grandfather's funeral when my mother spoke. And no, my grandmother's funeral. And when she said, like her father was the head of the family, but her mother was the neck on which that head stood. Mm-hmm. Right. So if you can visualize, you can't, if you have a head with no neck, that's, something's not working.
Right.
So it was like normal for me to want to support my husband. It's like, and then I knew I'm married a Marine, we moved. So I was constantly giving up my career. And then if you do that when you're 22, 23, 20, by the time you're 30 or whatever, it's like, okay, where's my pension? You realize what you give up. Mm-hmm. So I can easily say my career. But I can also say on a positive side, it just forced me to build a career or do things that I never even, that are unconventional, that may not look like a typical career, but I definitely don't have the pension I could have had if I didn't move around, if I can have the titles or so career, just to say career.
Okay, Yana. Yeah, I'm actually.
No, but at the same time, I don't want to say I'm not bitter because there are times I'm bitter.
Well, I'm going to tell the truth. I'm going to say the career can go. It actually did. The corporate life. But no, seriously, for me though, I think Terry, you and I were talking about this before. We recorded today is that as you get older, especially living in this Black experience, you become to value peace,
yes,
and freedom, over anything.
Yes.
And I agree.
Yes. No career has ever given me that.
Okay. That's so beautifully said because you're absolutely right.
Yes. 3 for 3. Career can go. Same. Gave up my career and willingly gave that thing up because, like Yana said, it caused me so much angst and stress to the point where my husband was like, I was coming home every day and he was like, who are you? I don't know who you are. You're not the same person. I was just high level stress every single day when I was coming home from work. And so, and y'all know how I am about some sleep now, child, because I got to get my sleep. I'm a sleep advocate.
She gonna lay down.
I'm gonna take a nap. I'm gonna take a nap.
You might have to make me lay down now.
Right.
I have to, I'll lay down for my body to,
I'll be like, go lay down somewhere.
But
I need enough sleep so I can go have my social life so I can hang out with my people.
Right.
But you know what? I do want to say that we were in the position that we did not have to imagine if you didn't have a supportive husband or family structure. Mm-hmm. I respect the women that are out there hustling because they got kids to feed, they got rent to pay, so career, but I don't, and I think a lot of people that get caught up in that's not even a career, it's just a job. And I love how you said career is a completely different thing and you can get invested in something and you realize it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Just like you said, Taryn, you're coming home, your husband's like, who are you?
Yeah.
And Yana, you were like, I can let that go. So I'm so proud of us that the three of us realize that, that's not anything to get hooked up.
I mean, you take some sacrificing. It's not one of the things you just wake up to and there's still things that you give up from giving that up that you lived and had when you had that in your life. Absolutely. When you had the career. But for me, the peace meter is off the chart. I know.
Man.
But also because, I feel like we have this in common, that we come from families that they want us to be educated and they tell us we can do anything, like they encourage us, and you have this vision and then, you get out there and it's a lot of instances you realize you're like, what? This isn't worth it. There's other ways to feel fulfilled and to make a difference. And I think a lot of people get caught up in careers that aren't making a difference. You guys are making a difference.
Yeah. What when it comes to this and what we do, we live for this because it ties back into the peace.
Yeah.
And the freedom.
Absolutely.
Yes. And wanting to see that more for our other sisters out there that's trying to find some peace, live or peace, even if it's just an hour a day listening to someone else. Woo,
And you know what?
There.
You know, and that, to me, that's such a power. Oh God, I don't want to cry, but that is such a powerful thing, because to be a Black woman, this is what I've discovered. You know, I've not been everywhere, but I have been to Asia. I have been to Africa. You know, I grew up in the States. I live in Europe. To find peace for us as Black women on any of those continents it's elusive. It's not given. A lot of people in the States are like, oh, if I leave the States and I move somewhere else, I'm going to be so much better. It's like, no, you know what? No. You go to Asia, certain parts, and you're like, everyone wants to touch your hair, or they want to talk to you, or they want to take a picture with you, or they're like, and you're like, that's not peace. Okay, I'm out of the States. Maybe you're not trying to kill me, but I'm like a zoo animal. That's not
right.
Peace. You know,
that's actually one of the questions I wanted to ask you. I know we're jumping ahead, and we'll get back to like a little bit more of your backstory, so you can get like more of our listeners a little glimpse of you and your story of today. But since we kind of touched on that, how has your experience abroad like broadened your perspective of life beyond the U.S.?
Yeah.
Well, you know, that's such a good question, and thanks for asking me. I know when I the first time I left, the continent, okay, because I've been to Canada and Mexico, I guess the Caribbean, you know, you're in the islands, you're off. But my first major trip was to Senegal. And I'm so glad I was one of those people that when you got off the plane, I was like on the ground, kissing the ground, you know, I was like, you know, I was one of those people.
Yeah.
Air Afrique at the time, Air Afrique, I think it's out of business, but you know, it was like black flight crew, from the pilots to the flight, you know, it was just like black. And then you get there, you know, I'm kissing the ground, and then like you exchange your money, and it's Black people on the money, you know, looking like me with their head wrapped up, or, you know, just Black people on the money. And to me, that was like so powerful to see Black people on the money. So to have that experience where you're there and, you know, just when you're back in Africa, and then, but that's powerful. But then at the same time, you're like so foreign because you're American and you're so Western. And I can remember being with a group of people, and we were eating, and I was using a fork and knife, and they were like, sister, use your hands. Don't be so Western. And you're like, wow, I'm Western. Like, you don't even necessarily think that you're Western. So traveling, so that's like, you know, and then that's kind of like wow, I don't want to say it's a slap in the face, but you think, here I am on the continent with my people, and they're looking at me like, you're Western. So it's like you're foreign, but they're still welcoming, but it's still, the differences are just so clear.
Yeah.
You know, so.
But do you feel more inclusive there? Although there's a kind of like that, I get that kind of like.
Oh, definitely inclusive. Yeah. Definitely, Yana. Definitely inclusive. It was never where they made you feel bad. It was just more of kind of like, oh, you don't have to do that. You're here. Like, you don't have to use that fork and knife.
The freedom in that.
Exactly.
The freedom in that.
Yeah, exactly. So it was more like that. Like, sister, put that fork and knife down. You know, like, look at us. We want to teach you. You know, like, you're home. You know, you can do this. You know, you can be like, you know, this is how we do it. And that was powerful, and it's emotional, and you don't even realize that you have all these Western ways. Just like we were saying, like the importance of career and what that means. It means something different in different places. So it's like you have all this Western stuff that's ingrained in you that you don't realize. And then you get there and they're like, sister, welcome. You know, sister, you know, eat with your hands. Sister, you know, and they want to do your hair, you know, put you in their clothes. And it's just a wonderful thing. And then, you know, you go to places like Europe, and then I can remember one time when I lived in Brussels, trying to date and going out with this guy, and Belgian guy, and Belgian meaning not of African descent, because you know, we're everywhere, and eating. And he was like, if I didn't know you were American, I would think you had the worst eating habits. And I was like, oh my gosh, I know how to use a fork and knife. But then it was like through his lens. Exactly. Terry, I see your eyes. I know exactly. I was just that horrified. And luckily, but thank God, I had that experience of being in Africa where this guy was like, put your fork and knife down. But I was using it properly, but he was like, and then you realize, and you look at other people, and it's like, okay, they do have a little. And then you go home and you start looking at people, and you're like, forget that. Do not try to judge people by European standards. So your brain gets mixed up in all these kind of things. So you get you're in one continent and people are like, put the fork and knife down. Then you're in another country. They're like, oh, you have horrible eating habits. And you're like, are you effing kidding me?
Goodness. That
And that's like on a
indoctrination.
date. I was like, okay, this isn't going anywhere. I'm like, I'm glad this, I found this out now because this is, But he was like, I didn't know you were American. And I was just like, and then you're like, oh, then you get sensitive about the tax of being American. And then you're like, really? I'm over here defending America at the same time they're trying to kill me? Trying to kill me?
Well, isn't that loaded?
So sometimes you throw yourself out here, and whether you're home in the States in your neighborhood or you're out there in the world, you're like, I just can't win.
Yeah.
So why Sweden?
Only because this man that I met, I would have never thought about living here. I guess, if I were to think about, like, if you were to ask me before I met my husband, I shouldn't say this man, my seed. But it wasn't a career move. I have met other Americans, African Americans, that have come here for their jobs. And I can say, for people that are like thinking about they want to escape and go somewhere, first of all, look at Sweden's COVID policy. We can look at that different later. But if you're in IT or something, you can come over here. But a lot of people come over here for love. And that's one thing I did. And again, we're talking about career. I had rebuilt a career. I was in Brussels, had my own apartment, career, gave that up again to come over here. But because we said career, like love and family is more important, and happiness and self-fulfillment. So that was an easy thing for me to walk away. But again, I'm easily bitter. I've come to find out. And if he gets on my nerves, I'm like, you know what, I gave up. But you can't do that in a relationship because I did that willingly. And that's the other, and that ties into when you are in a foreign country and you're African American, which means to a lot of people you present African. We're part of the diaspora, and they want to treat you like a refugee or whatever. And you're like, you know what? You don't know who I am. Why would you don't know who you're talking to. And what's wrong with being a refugee? Like you get to live all these different experiences unwittingly because people, they will just look at you and they don't know what you are. And then when you open your mouth, oh, you're American. But then you get that thing, well, where are you really from? You say you're American. Well, what do you mean? Well, where are your parents from America? Well, we're America. I happen to be from a family that, we've got the family Bible with like the entry from 18 whatever, because, that's where you put the births and stuff in. So it's like, okay, I know I can go to the 18 whatevers. So it's like you get challenged for like are you really American? And then you're in America and they're like, are you American? You know how they treat us?
Yeah.
So, you kind of get that. And then you go to where I've had experiences in Senegal and Zimbabwe. You're African American. They think you're rich. Because if there's, I don't know, they read Ebony Jet, they're like Michael Jackson, back then or, whatever. So it's weird. It's an interesting thing being a Black woman. I don't know what it's like to be a Black man, but a Black woman traveling, or existing in different continents and different spaces because people have these preconceived notions. And we know what, and the thing is, like, as bad as America is, we at least know where we stand.
Right.
Which brings me to a dividing question, then we definitely get to your backstory.
Yes.
So this is another one, gotta go.
Oh yeah, back to the game.
Life abroad and its experiences, or life in America and its experience.
Woo, 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 woo.
No, you gotta give me 3 choices.
No, you get this.
No, this is sometimes they can be 3 or 2.
Which one's got to go? Well, then the life abroad, because I'm an American. I'm not going to give up. I was born in Washington, D.C. to 2 perfectly fantastic parents. I have a fantastic sister who's 7 years older that asked for me. There's this sweet little story when she went to my mom and said, how much did I cost? And my mom was like, what do you mean? She's like, can you buy me a little sister?
Oh.
So I know I'm loved. I'm wanted. I've never felt anything like that. I have a fantastic family. I would never, like a lot of Americans give up their citizenship. I'm like, you would have to pry my citizenship and passport out of my cold, dead hands. It's not mine to give up.
Yeah.
It's something that we fought for. We're still fighting for full citizenship. I will never, no, I'm an American, and that comes with all the rights and privileges. And that means I get to travel and do whatever. But no, I would never not be an American. I wouldn't exist if I wasn't an American. That's who I am. I would be creating a different identity So
Wow,
no, that's easy. I would never give up my heritage and my upbringing and my background. Europe, traveling is always a place that you can go, but I'm an American proud. For all its warts and stuff, I'm proud. American. That's what I am. That doesn't mean I think my country's perfect, but to be an African American in the world, what I've learned, other people from the diaspora, they look up to us. They look at our civil rights movement as like something to hold up and behold. They haven't had that in France. They haven't had that in Germany. They haven't had that in the UK. They haven't had that in all these places that we occupy, all these other countries where we occupy these huge spaces, where we made these huge contributions. We have set the standard for civil rights and the perpetual fight for freedom. And we've done it through our music, through our art, through our writing, through our culture, through our taking the water hoses and getting back up. From the John Lewis's getting cracked in the head, and getting up and then going on and being, a representative and changing laws. So I would never, no disrespect to our cousins and our relatives in the African diaspora, but we hold a special place. Everybody's history is unique, but the history of the United States and our struggle has been an inspiration to our cousins around the world. And I would never trade that for any other identity.
Wow. I love your take on that. Like, I just love your perspective. I love all of that because of the things that we deal with in this country. And it's like, we can't win for losing. We feel like it's, the constant fight and the constant struggle from day one. And so, yes, then you have this feeling of escapism. Like, if I could just get away and just not be here, but your perspective from the standpoint of like, but I wouldn't be me. I wouldn't be who I am if you would have a completely different identity.
Well, Tara, let me tell you, not to cut you off, but here's the thing. We want to escape, but you can't escape your identity.
No, I know.
You get that. I'm still African American, and people still want to talk to me about stuff. And then when you have stuff that happens, like the whole Black Lives Matter movement that we just lived through, because that's our generation, what we're going through, that's with you. It hurts as much as if I was an eyewitness on the street, right? It's the same. It doesn't matter if I was on the street in Minnesota witnessed it. It hurt me as much here as it did. So there's and that's one thing I've learned. We cannot escape. We can maybe escape the immediate pressures or circumstances, but we cannot escape our identity. And that goes with you wherever you are.
Right. Well, and I think, like you were saying, the fact that, our brothers and sisters and our cousins that live abroad and everywhere else in the world, they view us from the standpoint of not even just the accomplishments, but the fact that we have been able to be resilient in our struggle and overcome, and you know what I mean? Like, still do great things. And
look, absolutely. Look, what we did with that struggle we can talk about the whole history of Africans in America from 1619 to present day. But if we just take it back from like the 50s, like when the modern day, like, I don't know if you guys got to see on Hulu, Billie Holiday versus United States versus, okay. They call her the godmother of the civil rights movement. So if we take it from the 40s to now, but even back, like Frederick Douglass and, Harriet Tubman, like the abolitionists that went around, Europe and enlightened people to what was happening. But if you take it to the modern day, we are the only, and I don't want to say this, I take that back because I'm not a historian, but what we have done, we have made the laws change to say, treat us like equal citizens. That hasn't happened in the UK. There's tons of ways, or in France, or other places, like, if you look at the former the colonizers, the European colonizers, if you look at the countries where we have immigrated to because of colonization, for example, France, huge Black population, UK, Germany, even tons of Black people there, we can go on. There has not been a movement in any other country, Western country that I'm aware of, and I would love to know that we're not alone, that has taken it to the courts and said, you know what, treat us like equals. That has not happened in France. That has not happened in the UK. That has not happened. And so that's like, that's inspiration. And people, that's why this Black Lives Matter movement is global. Because people are like, it's happening here too. We're with you. Why do you think people care about Breonna Taylor? You know, the names, there are too many names to list. Yeah. And, you know, Trayvon Martin. Why do you think people got upset about Trayvon Martin? Why people are like watching what's happening with George? Because they know in France that could happen to me. It happens there. But it's not going to change the law. There's not going to be some movement. I shouldn't say it's not going to be. There has not been some movement. Like maybe an option, like, you know, we could see like, you know, the Caribbean countries, all these African countries, they're like, okay, we're going to be free. You know, they threw off colonialism. They did that. Great. Yeah. Pan-Africanism. God bless. You know, we know that. But as far as changing the law in the United Kingdom to say that, you know, it's against the law to discriminate against Black people for housing, we've got those laws. Now we're still working to make sure that that's played out. And so that's one thing that I hold on to. But at the same time, it's like, oh God, how many generations is it going to take before? And you know what? I don't know. Do you guys know? Have you heard this? I think it was Coretta Scott King that, if I can paraphrase her, she said that every generation has to have like their civil rights movement. Mm-hmm. Like it's not just like one movement. Yeah. So this is our generation movement with, you know, but we haven't seen that in other places. But the good thing I think about being in the African diaspora is that we know enough to know that if it's going to happen, if it happens over there, then that's going to help us make it happen over here where we are. And that's one thing, the fact that you do get when you're an African American and you do move abroad, you do get this respect that you don't even realize other people have, because they're like, we saw you. We know King. We know Malcolm X. You know, we know Billie Holiday. We know Jesse Owens even. You know, they know all our music, all our country, you know, and it's like stuff that's like, really? Like my husband, he's like, yeah, I know about the Civil War and this, that, and, you know, they know all that stuff. Yeah. So that's one thing that's empowering. But, you know, then you have the backlash, like, well, then why is America still so effed up? And it's like, you know, good question. We learn from you guys. You know, we need to teach us a little better, or we need to work together. But so, yeah, I would never not be an American because I don't have to be proud. But you know, it's like everybody's got like that crazy uncle or that cousin who embarrasses you or whatever. But they're still family.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
You know, like you would have, and I will say it again, you would have to pry my American passport out of my cold dead hands.
I can see that, but sometimes I be wanting to bop America.
But here's the thing: bop, and come, and that's good because you do get this thing. Because I can remember when I first moved to Europe, it was like I knew it wasn't perfect, but I still felt like I could breathe in a different way. Yeah, you know, it was like okay. So they're just going to see me as an American, and how I get treated is going to, like, once we get through like that 20-minute conversation about like, where are you really from? Right. You know, because they don't want to just take America as like the end thing. I got to be somewhere from Africa, you know, and it's like, well, you know, yeah, but trust me, I'm generations old American. Yeah, of course I come from, you know, are you going to grill the Italian American? You know, whose great-great-grandmother come over and say, where are you really from? You know, so stop that. So you have to get people shade and be like, look, I may not be fluent in your language. You know enough English where I can say, look, you're messing with me now. Yeah. I don't have patience with that. I'm not the one that's going to teach you this. But if I tell you I'm an American, trust me.
Take my word for it.
You know? Yeah. So once you get past that, there is a little bit of a freedom that you do have. But at the same time, I realized don't be naive because, you know, I can remember I can't remember the year, but reading a story about, I think wasn't African American, he was African, and he had a son, I think it was in southern Sweden, and I don't know exactly who attacked him, but then somebody tried to throw him off the bridge. Like, somebody had messed with his little son, like knocked the toy out of his hand, and, you know, father protect him. They tried to throw him off a bridge. And I was like, you know, I'm walking around in Sweden like I'm safe and black, and I'm like, you know what? We're not safe anywhere. Yeah. So yeah, if you keep that, and then you kind of take it to like degrees of safety, like, you know how it is in the States, you know, that's talk you have to have with your sons and your kids, you know, the police stop you, this is what you do. I don't have that same level of fear if I were going to be involved with the police here. I would have more level of fear of just a random person walking down the street thinking that they wouldn't value my life in the same way. but I don't have a fear of the police the same way. But I know enough to know that in the UK, Black people die in police custody disproportionately to non-Black people. You know, like, or people of color, for sure, die disproportionately in police custody than your classic British person would, you know, what you would think. So I learned not to, like, I can't walk around with a false sense of security, but I don't have to walk around with the same fear I would necessarily walk around with in the States, depending on where I am. So, you know, you guys come balanced. Once you get your vaccines and things open up, you're so more than welcome to come and visit. I'm going to hold you to it, actually, because like I say, I'm lonely. So you come visit.
We're vaccinated.
I don't even know.
Are you vaccinated yet?
We are. I don't know.
Well,
Sorry, y'all. I just put it all out. You halfway, but yeah.
I'm halfway. I got mine when I was home because my husband was like, get it before you come back because things are moving. You know, Europe is about 6 months behind.
Really?
U.S.
I heard that, yeah.
Isn't that crazy? That's crazy. And you know what they're doing now? Because somebody told me that the manufacturers have stopped exporting vaccine because they want to make sure they have enough for their countries. So if you're not from a country where you're making it, have you heard that?
I heard countries are hoarding. Yeah. Yes.
So what people are doing, like the vaccine I had the Pfizer, so it's 3 weeks apart. So now that people are getting it, and they get their second one like 2 months later or whatever, because they want to make sure everybody can get their first dose because they don't have enough, and then they're hoping they'll have enough. I'm like, ooh, girl, cousins, I'm so glad I'm vaccinated. But my husband had a mild case of the COVID, of the Rona. He had a mild case of the Rona, but he's back to work and stuff. And his brother is a doctor, and he said, you know, he probably boosted your immunity to these mutations. Because I had to get tested again because I was living with somebody with COVID, and I'm totally no COVID. I was like, Pfizer's work. So to anybody that's thinking about not getting the COVID because I'm not getting the COVID, but the vaccine. Look, nobody should be thinking about getting the COVID, right?
Right.
Corona. But if anybody's hesitant about getting the vaccine, just really, 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 really think long and hard about, because it's and here's, you know I'm getting off topic, but it's disproportionately affected us in the UK and Sweden and France. And when I say us, I mean Black people. We're disproportionately affected everywhere, not just the States. And I'm like, how can that be? And it has nothing to do with genetics, but it has to do with we live differently when it comes to like housing opportunities. You know, we're more likely to be multifamily together to be able to afford decent housing, whether it's in the States or Europe. I'm finding the same thing. Like when you present yourself at a hospital in the UK or France or Sweden and you're Black, they may not take you seriously. With your it's the same thing. So that's the other thing. People are like, I want to bounce. It's like, you know what? But it's just different
same hurdles,
levels of severity.
Same story, different destination.
Different destination. I tell people, you know, they say the grass is. It's like it's just a different shade of green. Yeah. But the grass is still grass.
Yeah.
So, but I think the advantage of being an African American and moving somewhere else is like our skin is so thick. You know, like we've seen it all. We've been so tested before. You know, so when I see that person that maybe out of curiosity is trying to touch my head, it's like, you know, I'm swift. It's like, I got that swivel. I've been like, you know, like we've been through that before. You know,
I don't understand. Just even on that topic, and then we can move on. But just even on that topic of like not touching our hair, why is that a thing for only Black?
Because we don't go around trying to touch everybody's hair. I don't care to touch your hair.
I don't know what your hair is.
Definitely not strangers. I mean, like somebody you know, you're like, oh, baby, look at your hair. That looks so good. You know, that's different. But yeah, I don't know. And I had this conversation a Facebook conversation with somebody who was like, oh, yeah, you know, well, it used to be, you know, she was a white woman and she used to be like, you know, well, yeah, you know, we used to get the hair set, the roller set, and we'd be like, don't touch it. I was like, it's not the same thing. Don't try to usurp my experience.
Yes.
When you're talking about, I got a fresh dude, don't touch my hair. I was like, was it a Black person trying to touch your hair out of curiosity, by the way? Or you were just saying that, you know, it's a completely different thing. And I think that a lot of it is, well, definitely straight up curiosity. And I can remember being like 9 years old in camp with Eleanor Swearinger, who was my best friend. and it was in West Virginia. We were the only two Black girls, at least in our cabin. And we used to ride horses. It was in West Virginia around a lake. And I can remember being in the cabin. And, at night she was like parting my hair, greasing my scalp, and the white girls were like, ew, what are you doing? You're putting oil in your hair. And we were like, yeah. And they were like, oh, if you did that, our hair would be so greasy. And we were like, but then we were like, it was a new experience for both of us. And then remember in the morning, they woke up and their hair was greasy. We were like, they didn't have greasy hair. They didn't put grease in their hair before we went to, but they woke up greasy and having a shower, And so the idea of putting grease in their hair just like blew their mind.
Right.
Or their scalps and then we saw the next day, they wake up greasy. Okay. Yeah. And then have to wash their hair. But it was just a completely, and I was like, okay, that's okay and I can remember this boy, maybe in school, maybe it was camp, wanting to touch my little afro. And he asked me though, perfect, like innocent little 9-year curiosity, can I touch your hair? And I was like, sure, I didn't think anything weird. And he was like, oh, it's so soft. And I remember thinking, what did he think it was going to feel like? But I was like, that's okay. You're 9. But when you're like 35 trying to then no, sorry.
Because I feel like at that point, as an adult, you are not curious. You don't respect my boundaries, my personhood, and you feel like free reign because you look how you look and you have access to everything. And so you feel like you have access to my personhood. And that's a no-no.
But all of that, that's just respect of personal space. You don't go, even if it's...
That's what I'm saying.
Let's not even talk about hair. Body in general.
That's what I'm saying.
Put my hands on your body without me asking.
Yeah. I got a bubble.
But just me, so anywho.
Well, you know what? That is a tender subject for us because Black women have never had ownership of our bodies. If you look about the history of America.
Absolutely.
We never owned our own bodies. And so that's a very sensitive thing. We can, it's a very ugly thing to talk about, but, we didn't, from the time we set foot in North America, we didn't have possession of our bodies and our bodies were violated in ways, unspeakable horrors. So it's part of that. Like, you still think you can just touch me? Like, okay, you're not going for my, in a sexual way or whatever, but the hair is a very intimate thing. I did not mind that, and I would welcome curiosity with young kids at that thing. Because like I said, me and my girlfriend, Eleanor, our eyes were like huge when we saw what their hair looked like when they woke up in the morning, like greasy and stringy.
Right. And you were children. I think children, that's a learning experience, right? But I'm talking about grown adults or people who you gotten to a point where you shouldn't be touching somebody, period. No. You know what I mean? And now we just think we can do... Yeah, whatever. But no, I totally understand that. I wish we could sit and talk about this particular topic forever because we can go on and on about our hair.
Go back to our group chat because there are some things
definitely.
Our hair is political without even trying.
Yes.
It's political without, and I'm like, how can something growing out of your head be political? But it is.
But it is. But I want to talk to you about the work that you were doing because you this wonderful sign back there behind you. It says fighting for us. And you were doing some fighting for us abroad. Now, you're an advocate for overseas voters and a member of the Democratic National Committee with Democrats abroad.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell us, what has that experience been like for you?
And I'm guessing like you, like, I don't think voting or, like, I don't know if it was a rite of passage for you. Like, like getting your driver's license, registering to vote. Like, it was just like one of those things, like, you knew you were going to do, like, when the time came, like, when your age came, So voting has always been something, that I was going to do. And when I moved overseas, I knew that I could vote absentee ballot. That was just something that I knew. But before I knew about Democrats abroad. But one reason I'm a passionate overseas voter advocate is that a lot of people don't realize that, you can vote. Mm-hmm. You can vote. Like we were talking about the power of the passport. You don't want to give up your passport. It's like, well, then, you need to vote. And Americans that live abroad, you need to file taxes. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to pay taxes, but you have to file. So if you've got that obligation, and, Americans, it's our God-given right to, do whatever, wear a mask, not wear a mask, or not wear a mask, but, well, it's your God-given right to vote, and we know that they're trying to take that away from us. So I'm like, Black people, wherever you are, vote. And especially Americans, vote. You live abroad, vote. and a lot of people just don't know they can do it. So I don't want to say it's my mission. I'm part of an organization. Democrats Abroad, we exist to get out the vote, to let Americans know that you can vote. And then the second part of that is to talk to the issues that Americans abroad face that are unique to the ones that we face when we're at home. So we have the shared values, like, we want to have a good environment. We want to have a justice system that's actually fair. We want to have health care. We have all of that, but then we have some issues that are unique. So I'm definitely passionate about letting Americans know that you can vote and that you should vote, and that if you have a passport, it's not just your right, it's like your duty. I believe in citizenship. Like, I don't want to litter. Like, I don't know. I feel like I sound corny, but it's just like part of being a good citizen. Like, you have to vote. And it's a very weird thing to me that people are like, oh, I don't want to vote. My vote doesn't count. It's like, if your vote didn't count, they wouldn't be trying so hard to take it away from you. They wouldn't have denied it to us for so long.
Which actually is a point I want to address. Since now, this last election has, certain things happened that has never happened before. And
what do you mean?
Take as far as, Georgia flipping blue and with all the different changes there. And then, with COVID season, the absentee ballot was a really high volume ballot that really changed the course of this election this past election year. So with that said, there are now new laws that are being implemented in different states, with Georgia being the first, that are now trying to counteract against and make, I guess, absentee voting and some other things for voting too in general, but particularly absentee voting much harder to do. Is that something that you guys are talking about abroad, and kind of like what work
are we? Look, are we? We're like boiling hot, like and here's the thing, this is when it's embarrassing to be an American. When my husband is like, so Georgia says it's against the law to give people standing in line water, or you're saying you can't vote on a Sunday, like anything. This is one thing that I can say for sure in Sweden. Well, and because it's against the law not to vote. You will get fined if you don't vote. And I think it's the same thing in Australia. There's a penalty to pay for not voting. So that's the other extreme. Like in the States, they go through all, they will do anything they can to keep you from voting, to telling people that, it's not safe to vote by mail. We've been voting by mail in the States since the Civil War. That's just a fact. That's a fact. So if we can vote safely in the 1860s in the Civil freaking War, you're going to tell me in 2020 that we can't do it safely? This is the safest election that we've had in modern times. Did I say it's perfect? No, because people are involved. There are mistakes. They get caught. They get fixed. There's no willful voter fraud. So yes, this stuff that's going now, we look at it as like criminal. We take it personally. It's an attack on my rights, on my freedoms, on a democracy. We hold ourselves up to be the greatest democracy in the world. We as African Americans know we're the biggest hypocrisy in the world. We know that. That's one thing that we can say firmly. And no, I'm not giving up my citizenship. I'm going to make you I'm going to hold you up to your promise that Master Jefferson wrote, all people are created. Well, I'm going to make Master Jefferson. We're going to make that stuff that he wrote a reality, So we look at this as like, we take it personally. This is an affront. And it's an affront on our military. So you're going to tell our military that they can't vote by mail? You're going to send them on the front line, but then you're going to say they can't vote by mail? So it's not just about being the person that's sent overseas to work or went overseas for love, but this is affecting our military. Those are the majority. I mean, that's a huge population of our overseas voters at any given time. The big burden we place on our military, what we ask of them. So that's why we feel like we have the moral high ground, and that this shenanigans or whatever that they try to pull on the state level, I feel like it's, again, I'm no scholar, but it's got to be unconstitutional. I think the Supreme Court's going to have to test this and turn this around. But you can't tell an American that they can only vote if they come to the polls in person. That's voter suppression. We've been voting by mail, as I said, since the Civil War. So these voter suppression tactics And this is why we know we're effective. This is why we know our vote is important. If they're going to try to do it, and the whole Sunday thing, stroll from the polls, we know the importance that the African American church has in the community.
Yeah.
Go to the polls. They try to take that away.
Yeah. But my husband will look at me like, you can't give people water. It's like, that's like a human rights violation. How can you not give a thirsty person water?
Right.
In the greatest country, the most wealthy country in the world.
But it's so many things that are padded into just the Georgia one, because there are other, like I said, states that are now trying to adopt their own version. They're trying to gear it up as an integrity type law, but there's here and there. But there's so much padded in that. I actually wrote about it.
Tell me, for example, a couple things that really get on your nerves.
If you want to check that article out. But no, what was that, Adrian?
What? Just tell me a couple things that really get on your nerves about it. Like you said, that are padded in.
Well, of course, we talked about, so for instance, Georgia, we actually have a lot of family that lives in Atlanta, in the Atlanta proper area. So this affects a lot of our family too, and also from living there. So one thing that is going on is that the Atlanta metro area is majority black. And what they're now doing, what they've implemented in this law is that now they are, for one, they're lowering the number of ballot boxes for the absentee based on population. So you think about all the major counties that surround Atlanta. So you got I don't know all of them, but like Gwinnett, DeKalb, Cobb, Fulton, things like that. It's a major area. And if you go from, I think there were, correct them, don't quote me on these numbers. I'm not looking at my article, not looking at the numbers right in front of me, but just going to give basic now. Say you start off with 75 boxes for this square mileage of area that covers millions of people. Now you're bringing that down to, you're trying to say per population, per 300,000, you get one box now. So you're dramatically cutting that in half.
It's just bananas.
And not only that, they now are cutting back the time for the where you can't, as far as early voting time. So you think about it, the Atlanta Metro is more working Black Americans in this area.
Disproportionately affects us.
Yep.
Right. So what used to be more they're given, I think, the will of the county to make the decision. So they have the option to extend it to 7, or they can make it be 8 to 5. That makes a dramatic difference.
Dramatic. Absolutely.
The access to so many people to get. And then you think about access to the boxes. Not a lot of people may have transportation.
Yep,
absolutely.
Or people are just not physically able to do it. So it's just so many things. That's just one core piece. And then there's a piece where I think this is a direct shot to the Secretary of State there. They're now removing the Secretary of State's ability to certify elections. They now created their own board
that is, of course,
elected, but it's elected by a certain party that is in charge at that time. So it's not really bipartisan. Nonpartisan. It's not really a nonpartisan committee that's over this if it's being created by the party in charge.
Right.
So they're giving this power. They're moving the power from the Secretary of State to now giving the power and the will to this particular elected committee to determine if the election is certified or can pick it apart or whatever. So it's so many different pieces that's in there, y'all.
Jim Crow point 2.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. I don't want to say that we got comfortable because I don't. Can we honestly say Black people ever really been comfortable in the States? But I think that we thought that this couldn't happen, that we had the law on our side. But that's the thing about the law; it's fluid. It's your legislators. They can the people in Georgia, they did a little huddle and say, "Oh my God, look what they did." We got to push back, and that's the thing that we can't be complacent. And the thing with me, and when I talk about with other people and Democrats abroad, it's exhausting because our election cycles are so long in anyway. Like we're already thinking about midterms now, and then, there's who's going to replace Debbie Haaland as, she's this, the first Native American Secretary of Interior, so it's like, who's going to replace her in New Mexico? And it's like, okay, New Mexico, is not a huge African American population there, but we got to make sure that it's a huge Native American population there. Yeah. So, if their rights aren't respected, our rights aren't respected, so it's like who replaces her is important. So with Democrats abroad, that's the thing. With Democrats abroad, we're the only state party that helps every other state elect Democrats. So there's an election all the time. There's a special election. Somebody's always getting replaced. There's always something going on. It's not just like every 4 years or every 2 years.
Right.
There's always something. So we're constantly working on get out the vote. It's a constant thing, and we have to be vigilant because like what they're aren't they trying to do that same mess in Texas? Like stuff that they were doing in Georgia.
The governor did. Yeah, they just signed some nonsense, and he's
So that's the thing. Like, so with Democrats abroad, it's like, okay, it's easy to be thinking, okay, yeah, I don't have to, if you're a voter, you're like, okay, I only have to pay attention, on the even years. Like, okay, I don't have to worry about who's going to be president until 2024. It's like, no, we have to hold the House. We have to hold the Senate. Who's your governor? What's the mayor? What's happening with your city council? Politics are very local. People are like, oh, it doesn't matter who's president. Well, if you think that, it matters who's on your school board, doesn't it? Yeah. It matters who some states elect, like who's the sheriff in your town? Yeah. Like what's the justice system like? It's like we're constantly having to be vigilant and worry about who's on our side or who's not. So, can I get birth control? Is an abortion legal in my state? Am I, I'm a single mother, I need assistance for my kid, like, what is that going to mean? Like, what steps are they going to put me through to say that, I can get, benefits to help feed my child? And, it's constant, like, okay, I'm an hourly worker. What protections do I have? I work for a company. Can I have a union? Like, who's in my state that's like pro-union, pro-labor, pro-family, pro-healthcare, we're constantly like, what are the gun laws in my state? Like, that whole thing, like in Florida, stand your ground. Could he really get away with shooting Trayvon Martin like that? Like it's constant. So Democrats abroad, we're constantly worried about, what's happening in everybody's different state.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, what was like, what's the most challenging thing about you doing this work abroad in your mission? Like, is it constantly having to be immersed in all this information across the states and then making sure that, Americans in abroad are aware of the things that are happening to help influence?
You hit it on the head.
Okay.
You nailed it.
Okay.
And the thing about it is good. I personally do not have to be up on it because we're hundreds of thousands of volunteers. Okay, I want to say we're probably up to 200,000 now. We're one of the largest overseas organizations of American volunteers. Mm-hmm. I do know that. And with that comes so much power because it's so much talent. Like, we've got lawyers, we've got doctors, so we've got people that can speak to the law. We've got people that can talk about what good healthcare looks like because they know what it's like in their country. They know what socialized medicine looks like. We know we've got members whose sons want to give up their American citizenship because they can't vote in their state, but they still have to register for the selective service in their state, for example. So we've got dozens of global committees that just focus on the issues. So I don't have to know every state law, but I can go to my Get Out the Vote committee. They know everything. They know what's going on. Like I'll see the message and I'll put something out on Facebook. That's why I know about the New Mexico thing. And I'm like, okay, I'm Black. I didn't know a lot of people in New Mexico that are Black necessarily, but I don't know. And how many does it have to be? Mm-hmm. But I use my platform because then somebody else who lives in New Mexico and you need to tell them, hey, who's going to replace, like we can't be complacent. We can't assume that a good person is going to be replaced by another good person. And when I say good person, I don't mean like doesn't, is perfect.
Right.
But is looking at the big picture and is not it's not about me, it's about us. If I'm from New Mexico and the Native American community there is being mistreated, then I shouldn't feel comfortable.
Right.
I can't be
pushing the needle for what's right, no matter.
Yes.
Right.
Thank
right
you.
is right. Right is just.
Thank you, Yana. That's exactly what's right is right.
I wish more people thought like that.
Well, that's the thing. We have to, because what's the expression? Like none of us are free until all of us are free.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody's, and this huge thing now about what's happening to Asian Americans, or not just Asian Americans, it's happening in the UK, being attacked on the street, because whether it was because they thought they were the cause of COVID, or, when a bunch of nonsense and people believe it, then, then it's like, okay, now there's this big movement for that. Well, we know how that is. It's like, okay, we stand with you because we know how that is. And if, if they punch you in the face, what's going to keep them from punching me in the face because they don't like, something that's going on with my community. So that's something that Democrats have brought. Yeah, we're constantly, and it may seem strange to people because it's like, well, you don't live in the States. It's like, well, and that's what I was telling you. You can move, but your Americanism goes with you.
Yeah.
That's, you can move, but you can reinvent yourself, but you'll always be an American. Unless, I don't know, unless you totally, that's your goal to change your identity. But, when I open my mouth, and I've had this happen to me on the street, people come up to me and they think I'm African, and then I open my mouth, they're like, oh, you're American. And then they're not interested, or they're more interested. It's weird. It's happened to me.
You've had that experience before.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Where'd that happen to you?
We were in South Africa.
In Cape Town.
Oh, that's on my wish list. Where'd you go?
Cape Town.
I hear it's beautiful.
It is. It is absolutely beautiful.
Tell me what happened there. They thought you were South African, or?
Well, we were there for about
a week. Yeah.
But we noticed, like, on day 2, when we would walk down the street, because we actually, I think also too, where we stayed, it was like
an upscale.
I was gonna say posh, and nothing wrong. And let me just say this: it's nothing wrong with us staying in posh places.
Right.
We deserve.
Right. Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well,
so good for you.
Right. So we were there, and actually on the first day, like people that was down there working, their heads turned, and we was like, "Is this a good thing or a bad thing? Like, are we right?" And then the second day, we were walking, and people would stop and turn their heads at us again. It was like, "Okay, is there something on here? Like, what's going on?"
Yeah.
And we were talking, and we heard somebody walk by, and it was like, "Oh, they're American," and it was like, it kind of not offended us from the standpoint of, I don't know,
identifying as Americans, but it was like,
it kind of offended us in a way of saying, like,
we don't belong.
If it wasn't because we were American,
we
didn't belong in this part of town.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I know what you're saying. It's hard to articulate. It's one of the things you have to experience. Yeah. But I know exactly what you're saying. So I'm so glad you had that. Well, I can't say I'm so glad you had that experience.
Right.
But I'm glad that you can relate, because I get, and I've not been to South Africa, but that's happened to me in other places where people just don't kind of really like they feel like you're out of place.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing here? And it's like, what do you mean? What am I doing here? You're here.
Right.
Why can't I be here?
And it's this perception too, because the other thing, because we were it was a couple's trip, so we were each with our husbands.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the next perception was, oh, they're celebrities, or they're basketball or the NBA players.
I know, you're flexing. Yeah, they must be somebody.
We just saved our little coins to come.
Right.
We normalize just so that
black people traveling just cause.
Right.
I know.
So there is that whole kind of like viewpoint of just like, even as our privilege, and I'm gonna go, we have a privilege as Americans when we go across, but still, it's like, no, you may, first of all, we had to push back on some people that was like, you have it made. It was like, no, we don't have, it ain't all cracked up to do.
Right.
Let me tell you though, that don't judge us just because we're American, that that is what signifies and validates this experience for us. Like,
no, cousins, I totally get it. I totally get it. And isn't that a weird experience to be in when you realize what's going on and you're like, seriously? Are you kidding me? You know, and so, that is kind of that can be part of your daily experience when you live abroad. And, you know, you experience it when you're a tourist. And then when you're a tourist, you're like, okay, you don't want that to be the whole, you know, you don't want that to a cloud over your experience about like why you're there. You're like, you don't want that to dampen, I should say, your experience of like getting into the culture. But it's definitely, and that's the weird thing, I think, about being an African American tourist. I don't think white people they don't go through that. At least, okay, maybe if they're the only white person in some really remote place, you know, they'll have some type of experience. But if they were just in Cape Town walking down, you know, nobody would even look at them twice and wonder, are they local or not?
Right.
You know, but so I'm so glad that because it is very hard to articulate. So I'm glad that you know what that experience is. But so take that and imagine if you had to deal with that every day. And it's tiring. It can be tiring. And I call that like part of the microaggressions that you have to deal with. And they're like chip away. You know, because it starts out like as a tourist, you're like, okay, then after a week, but then like, you're like, okay, seriously, it was like, okay, I'm your neighbor now. I've lived here for like, seriously, you're going to like freak out when you see me every time, you know, we're neighbors now. But yeah, it can be, I can freak my neighbors out just going to the mailbox, depending. And not all my neighbors I've got on this side and across the street, fabulous. But there's one set of neighbors that just like, I don't know. I think just me living and breathing freak them out sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like, well, is it because I'm American? Because I've heard a lot of people say in Sweden, well, they just don't know how to deal with Americans. And I'm like, what do you mean? They love our music. There's this culture here in Sweden where they love American cars. So they have all of that. It's like they love our culture, but then when they have to deal one-on-one with an American, it's like difficult. And then if you're black, it's like, it makes it even more weird for them. So I don't know what that's about. But then at some point you get tired and you're like, you know what? I'm not the one that's going to help you get over this. You know, like
I'm glad
and I think you can relate to that because like here, like when people like, if you have white friends or other people like trying to make sense of Black Lives Matter or what's going on, it's like, you know what, you need to do that work on your own. It's exhausting.
Right. Yep. Well, Adrianne, there's before we get ready, because we're getting ready to draw near close, and there's so many things.
Oh, it's not another game.
No, sorry. But no, I want to wrap this conversation up with a pretty bow and get back to positive imagery and exposure of Black women. And that's something that actually drew you and your platform to us, because that's something that you do as well. You've taken this on as well, and you do it from lens that we don't get to view as often. So you've taken the task to shine and uplift Black women in Europe, and you created this platform for women to connect. What was your motivating factor? And also is this only exclusive to only American expats and dual citizens, or is any woman of African descent, can they gain access? Can we join? No.
Oh, thanks so much for asking. Oh, no. You guys, come on, get on board now. It started, okay, when I moved to Brussels in 2004, we moved to Sweden in 2006. And when I moved to Sweden, I felt even more removed from the U.S. And I'm lucky, I feel blessed that I grew up in Washington, D.C. when it was Chocolate City. And it makes me sad to even, God, you guys are going to make me emotional to know that my D.C. is so gentrified now that it's no longer Chocolate City. But I grew up where, I had all these positive Black role models, outside of my family, and just was comfortable in my own skin. And then went to Howard University, and anybody that's gone to HBCU knows how empowering that can be. So I was like, I never even, just to think about being, you didn't even think about being Black. Like it was just like, it was cool. It was okay. It was whatever. I never experienced racism directly. But when I moved to Europe, it was like, where are all these positive Black women that are doing stuff that I was just so used to seeing? I was like, I know they're there. But then when I moved to Sweden, I was like, oh, okay, I got to really dig in and find these people. So I started Black Women in Europe blog totally out of selfish reasons, like a survival thing. And it forced me to do research. And I found, Black women who were lawyers at like the European Court of Human Rights in The Hague. Mm-hmm. They were TV broadcasters. They were Olympians. They were doctors. They were everything, because, we are everything. But they just were hidden. And when I say hidden, they weren't, okay, I did see TV Black broadcasters, but they would be so few. So it was like, okay, we do exist. I have to find them. And once I started digging, there were just like so many, and I would talk about them. And then it forced me to go back like in history. It's like, well, this isn't anything new. And like people talk about like Meghan Markle coming into the British royal family. They've been black royals before. Like Bridgerton isn't necessarily historically accurate, but there was a Black queen in the royal family who history says maybe came from the Portuguese royal family anyway. So it's not like it wasn't anything new, but so it forced me to find all this stuff, and then out of that, a social network grew, and there were other women like, oh my God, you're writing about this. I'm so glad to see this. I knew this was happening. And then, so it started from totally selfish reasons because I was so grounded, and I was like, okay, I know that there are other of us. Let's find it. And I never even thought or knew at the time that nobody else was doing it. Like maybe people were doing it for like country specific, but my thing was like Europe, big thing, Europe. And and my thing is like, I did not want it to be about African American women. I was like, cause I would, the diaspora, I was like, they're French women who are Black, who before, France colonized whatever were there. Cause we've always been everywhere, and history doesn't want to talk about that. But I even found out here in Sweden, my husband said, yeah, well, they're like, if you go back to the 1500s or before, they were, these travelers that they call blue men because they were so dark, they were blue. And, we know Black people that have like the blue sheen, so I was like, okay, we know that. So it was for me, it was keep me sane. It was to help keep me grounded. It was to help keep me positive, to let me know, even if I'm not meeting these people one-on-one, they exist and I need to amplify them. And I would have never, I can't call it a calling. That sounds so crazy, but I feel like I was lucky enough to have, when I worked for an agency, communication agency, and we were kind of like cutting edge with the internet. Like everything was like blogging was new, like everything was coming out. It just all came together at the right time. So I have 2 social networks on Facebook. One is for sisters who just live in Europe. And the reason I separated for us and around the world, because a lot of people would come to the group and be like, oh, I'm in the States. I want to move. How do you do this? And I was like, okay, that's okay. But at the same time, we need something for people in Europe. Like, okay, I need support. And for example, there's a sister and moved to Germany to live with her boyfriend, and he became abusive, and she had to get out of there like immediately. And somebody else was like, oh, I live in your town. Come now. Just come to me. So it was like, okay, we needed that. But we also needed something that may sound, like, well, where do I get my hair done? Where do you get those products? Yeah, that's important. You know what I'm saying? Where do I get those products for my hair or my skin or the makeup? Because you go into the stores and it's like, there's nothing for you. You'll go into a department store and they'll like Lancome, they'll have like a Black model or whatever. And then you go look at the colors. It's like nothing. It's just like they have to use that marketing material because that's what Lancome comes, but they're not stocking those colors. So it's like, so even for something like that, or just like, okay, I just meet who's in my hometown, who's within 2-hour radius. Let's get together. So it was, I have traveled to Copenhagen, which is like an hour and a half, just to have a picnic with other Black women because we just want to get together and love on each other. So it came out of totally selfish reasons. I can't say altruistic. I can't say I was trying to do something good for everybody. It was just like, can I keep myself together? And then you realize that there are other people that are trying to hold on and keep themselves together. And then you just, next thing you know, you've got a community. And then from there, it's just like, well, what else can we do? How can I help you promote your business? Or, what's your talent? You're doing this. Okay, I'm going to share your video, or, you've got a record, or an album or this video, just whatever. It's like, it came to the point, like, I don't care what you're doing, that you're doing something positive, I'm going to tell everybody.
Yeah.
You know, from either, you know, and you're the plant lady, you know, you've got your business. It just made so much, you know, coming from Chocolate City, where everything was always about, you know, where you had the preacher and the pimp, you know, the mayor and, you know, the trash collector. You're like, it was just a community. Everybody was respected. You knew what they were doing. So I was like, well, let's do the same thing over here. And that's where that came. I wish I could say it was because, I wanted to do something good. It was like, girl, I have to save myself.
No, and that's good enough. That's good enough.
So sometimes that makes the mission even more authentic because you're not just trying to do it just to say I'm doing something good. Sometimes good just comes from you doing just what you moved to do. And
well, you know, that's why why the three of us connect so much, because your mission is like, you know, let's amplify with these. And here's the other thing. There's so much negative news about us. It's like people, it's so easy to, and one thing I found about in Europe, they're like, you know, people think you're a prostitute. Like you came over, because a lot of us get trafficked.
Yeah.
You know, we get promised these better lives or whatever, and we get trafficked. Yeah. And it's like, you know what? There's nothing wrong with you ending up on the wrong end of a deal, but even you need to see positive stories that, okay, maybe you didn't come here, or the way you got here wasn't what you thought, but you're here now. And look at what these other women are doing. You can do beyond this if that's what you choose. You know, I'm never against people who choose to be sex workers. That's an industry. What do they say? It's the oldest industry in the world, right? If they weren't custom, that's, you know, I'm all about, if that's what you want to do, it's nothing wrong with that. I'm not judging, but I don't want us to have, I realize that I don't want us to have these small dreams or get caught up in these small nets that people fish us up in, or, you know, like these small dreams. I don't know. I was lucky enough that I was taught to dream big, and I'm not even sure what that means, but my dreams weren't limited. And to dream big, like we said, it was like to give up a career, that was easy. That doesn't mean like I was, you know, I thought I had to be president of something, but I just knew I could dream big. And I hope that Black Women Europe blog and stuff helps other women dream big. That they can see themselves in somebody that's doing something, and just dream big. Because if you don't dream, I think, to me, that's the saddest thing. You know, I can't, you know, my grandmother used to wake me up when I visited her. The first thing, what's your dream, baby? You know, like she wanted to know. So if I don't wake up, if I don't remember a dream, I'm a little sad because I think, I don't remember my dream. But if I can't imagine having a life where you just don't have dreams of what your future can be. That to me is the saddest. I can't imagine. So I just hope that once I did this out of myself, that it helped. Because it definitely boosted me, and it let me know that, okay, I can make it in Sweden. I'm here, I'm far, I'm foreign. But, you know, look at what these other women doing. I can do it. So
I just say this to kind of wrap that up, is that kind of, I know we're both aligned in our mission. And I think the greatest takeaway from that is you do this, you know, the whole negative and, you know, that you can find that without even looking for it. It comes naturally. It's just what is being spewed. And in order to get us to a space of what we want and how we want to be, we know who we are, but we have to change that human psyche. We have to get into the mind. And in order to do that, you got to start pushing out stuff to portray really what in reality is who we are.
Yeah.
So it's more
like-minded.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't want to cut you off, but it just dawns on me. It makes me want to cry. I've been on the verge of tears this whole interview, but that's so like-minded. And to hear you say it, you can articulate it way better than I can. But exactly what you. So my answer to my question is what Yana just said. That's my answer to the question.
I'll never speak for another Black woman. Her voice. I'm not here to take your voice away.
No, but you do. You have a gift. Yana has a gift. Yana has a gift where she can put words together to make your thoughts come together clearly.
Yes, she does.
She's able to put that out there. I agree with you 100%. She does.
Yes, she does. And that's what I'm giving you. You're not taking anything away. No, because everybody was like, Adrianne, get up. And then you see how it just cut off my like. But anyway, yeah. No, but Yana, you're not taking my voice away. I give you permission. I hope you let me take permission. I hope you give me permission for letting me say that you just summed up what I want to say because you said it beautifully. As you see your cousin, she knows. That's a gift that you have. And I want to thank you for sharing that gift for me because sometimes I feel like I don't make sense. But because we're so connected, you got me. You know what I'm saying? So thank you for making sense of what I'm feeling.
Yes.
Thank you. I receive that, and I need to do better of just receiving compliments and just standing into that. So I receive that. Thank you. That's all I'm saying.
All right.
You're welcome.
Okay, listen, Adrianne, because I want to be in a room with you and just I need a whole 2 weeks and just sit in a room and just soak you up.
Can we do that?
Yes, ma'am, we can. We're gonna figure it out. But I'm dead serious. Like, I don't know. There's something so familial about you to where I just really want to be in your presence and just, soak all that energy.
I know you guys are trying to wrap up. But let me just say one thing because this has something to do with something that I'm going through with whatever. And I want to say I love how you stand with Black women. And fearlessly, you do that fearlessly, you do that purposefully, you do it bravely. And I want you to know that I used to take that for granted, but there's some things that happened recently that let me know that that's not anything that I can take for granted anymore. And I really appreciate from you because I feel like we've known each other forever. But we've had a recently, like within a few months, connection, and the way that you fearlessly and bravely and purposely stand with me and validate me means everything to me. And I want to thank you both from the bottom of my heart for that.
Oh,
so sweet. Thank you.
Yeah,
I mean it.
And shed a tear. And I can't.
I know. A commercial can make me cry. So when we're talking about like serious stuff like this, I mean
connected then. Yes.
No, because and that's if I can have one last message, any Black woman that hears this, if you're not standing with another sister, ask yourself why. Because you know what? That sister may not be the one you need to be standing by. But if your first instinct isn't to stand with the sister, I want you to figure out that. And I do believe in trusting your instincts. So if you're like, okay, this isn't the sister I need to be standing with, I respect that. But I would challenge every Black woman to make their first instinct that I'm going to stand with the sister until she proves me or something shows me that I shouldn't. If we can do that, like all the other communities do, God knows, where we could be. But we need to stand. If 2020 didn't show us that we need to stand together, but I want to challenge Black women, stand shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know how else to say it, but I've seen it not go that way, and it's always puzzles me. So just like what you showed me, you guys immediately like, look, we think she's doing okay, and then you gave me the chance to validate that, and I appreciate that. But your natural instinct was like, we're standing with her. I'm standing with you too, and I hope that your podcast. Actually, I know your podcast is helping people do that. So just keep it up. Keep it up. Keep it up.
Oh my God. Y'all. Oh, well, y'all.
Keep it up.
Grab some tissue.
Kleenex. Well, okay, I'm not going to say they ain't going to pay us. I ain't going to say your name.
I was about to say, Kleenex.
For the tissue brand.
You can.
They for the tears that be shed on this show.
Yes. Go ahead, right now.
I know, but it's that I have learned that lesson where, and I don't know if that has something to do with expat experience, but like a lot of people, like, they don't want to make the white people uncomfortable, or they don't want to, and they know they should have said something and they won't. And that just breaks my heart, because we're going to always be the other. We're going to always be the one that they look at. So it's like, why shouldn't I be standing up for this person? They're not going to have any more respect for me because I didn't.
Yeah.
They may have, and who cares? That's the thing. I don't know. I'm old and comfortable enough in my own skin that I don't care what that other person is thinking when you're doing the right thing.
Yes. No, I'm with you.
Yes, ma'am.
I hate of trying to earn respect. Love me or leave me.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that a song? Love Me? Or that's
It could be.
I'm sure somebody wrote that.
But I'm like, love me or leave me alone.
Yeah.
Just let it go. But okay.
But no, Fantasia said, if you don't want me, then don't talk to me. Go ahead and free yourself.
Yes. Yes.
All right.
You know what?
Are there any new projects or major shows in the works for 2021?
You know what? Thank you so much for asking. I can quickly say, okay, in 2020, when we were like by March last year, we realized we were in a pandemic and people were freaking out. I did this workshop series called Let's Do Us. And my thing was like, I was just going to not pick people. I asked my network, who's got what talent, who wants to do what kind of network workshops, how can we support each other? And all these women stepped up to do it for free. We had a mental health workshop with a psychotherapist. We had writing workshop. We had a soca fit dance workshop, belly dance. We had kids acting workshop. We had directors talk. We had natural hair care. We had an opera singer. These are all Black women. Some from America, some not. Opera singer that she sang, she was going to do something about Puccini, some operatic concert from Vienna. But then what happened? I can't remember what tragedy it was, which is horrible. But some Black person got killed. It's horrible. I can't remember now because it's too many of us. And forgive me, soul, for not remembering. But she said, you know what? Right in the middle of like pre-broadcast rehearsal, she was like, you know what? I can't do it. So she sang Negro, African American spiritual. She was like, I can't. So we did over 2 months. We did this. And then I said, okay, I'm going to put together a business directory of Black women's businesses so we can support each other. So like the Let's Do Us thing for me was like, let's do us. Let's support us. Let's each other. So we did that. And it was all for free. This year, I'm doing Let's Do Us .2 because we still find ourselves, a lot of us on lockdown, trying to navigate this. So the first thing we're offering is 3 Soca Fit dance classes. This sister, I think she's from Barbados, but she's like a cultural ambassador for Canada. And she splits her time in Berlin. I think she's in Barbados now. She's going to do the Soca Fit thing. And I'm hoping with Sophia Lenore, who's going to do, yes, your baby is going to do something for how to pitch to Netflix. Because, she knows how to do all that stuff.
Yes.
So we're trying to figure that out. The psychotherapist wants to do a follow-up. The writer wants to do something. But last year we did it for free. This year I'm like, okay, sisters got to get paid. Right. Because that's one thing that we found, like a lot of, financial instability is a thing. So, but we're not trying to outprice anything. But anyway, if you go to bit.ly, what is it, / Let's Do Us .2. I hope you have the link in the show notes. I can send it to you.
Yeah.
Or you can always go to blog.blackwomenineurope.com and find it. But just trying again because I'm worried about, because, here's the thing. We know our mental health is always precarious and more fragile. Mm-hmm. So I'm really worried about making sure that we can take care of each other. So like the dancing is good for the soul and the body, if we can do, and I'm like, people got stories to tell. So if we can get Sophia Lenore to do this, like how to pitch these stories, like, Netflix is snapping up Black stories now. Now we're hot, right?
Right.
They want to tell our stories. So like help people do that and the mental health session. So just doing that. And then I'm really trying to how it is. Are you guys taking care of yourselves? So I'm trying to make sure I take care of myself too. So I don't want to try to do too much.
Right.
Right. But I was thinking that, there's some things that, like we didn't have carnival this year. Like, how people go to carnival? Come do it.
Yeah,
I know.
So I'm like, let's do those Soca Fit things because that's still keeping our culture alive, keeping our music alive. We can still do it and be in, just dance out whatever frustrations you have.
So what's the date for? Is this just ongoing thing for the year or?
Well, it's going to be May. Oh, thanks for keeping me on point. It's going to be May 6th, 13th, 20th for the Soca Fit at 7 p.m. Berlin time, which would be 1 p.m. Charlotte time, or maybe 12 Texas time, because
that sounds about right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I was thinking, okay, great. That could be like, if you're in the States, that could be like your lunchtime, or if you're in Europe, that's like after work. You got somebody like with the kids. And, I don't know. I'm trying not to really think too much because one thing I learned is, and I've got aging parents. Like when we first talked and got to know each other, I was in the States. I was lucky enough to be there when Daddy turned 95, Mommy turned 91. She'd probably kill me. You probably have to edit that part out. Don't
that's a blessing.
My mom.
Just don't tell her.
91. She's like, what are you talking about? So it's like, we got more focus on family. So I'm like, okay, I love my network, my lady, my sisters, but at the same time, I got to put my family. And then if I'm 3 months, if in the States, that means I was 3 months away from my husband. And, men are high maintenance. Mm-hmm. They're like, you got to show me something.
Right.
So now that I'm back home, so I got to have energy for that. Right? So, but, so I just felt like, okay, if we can do that, because I kind of do everything for selfish. I need those mental health sessions. Yeah. I need that Sober Fit. I want to know about Netflix because, why can't we figure out how to tell our stories? So I try to do things that I think if they're good for me, they're going to be good for other people. But basically, just for the rest of the year, I'm going to keep telling our stories. If anybody has any story about a Black woman in Europe that needs to be told, let me know. Contact at blackwomenineurope.com. Mm-hmm. I will amplify it.
Do you have any other social media handles?
Oh, you know what? Actually, I do on Facebook, blackexpat.com, Women of the African Diaspora, that I co-manage with another sister who's in the Netherlands, whose roots are in Suriname, which is a former colony in the Caribbean or South America, actually, of those people over there in the Netherlands. There's Afro-European Sisters Network. That's, again, on Facebook. That's something that she started. My Democratic National Committee page, if you look at Adrian George, DNC, you can find it if you Google DNC so you can know what's going on with Democrats abroad. If you're an American abroad, go to democratsabroad.org and sign up, and that will automatically put you in touch with the people in your country, but also that you'll get automatic messages when there's something that you need to vote on in your state. So if there's, my ring light, if there's like a special election going on, it'll let you know what's going on, because it's important if you're an American abroad to make sure that you vote. If you keep your passport, vote. I don't want to preach, but if you got a passport, it's like you've got to vote. It's a privilege. The American passport is one of the most coveted passports in the world. Mm-hmm. So vote. Make America the country that you want to be proud of to go home to. That when you go out and you're identified in your community as American, you want to be proud to be able to say, I know we got problems, but this is what we're doing. I vote. I care. DemocratsAbroad.org, Black Women in Europe, blog.blackwomenineurope.com. And if you're in Sweden, Stockholm Expat.
Just call it Adrian for all your needs.
You know what? Right. You know what? My husband's going to retire in a couple of years because military, you can retire at a decent age. He's been in since he was 19 when he had this joint. It's like, you know what? I'm so glad I found you guys because I think I can let you guys take over some of my stuff. Because we're on the same platform. We're on the same mission. So you guys.
We're going to circle back. We'll circle back.
Definitely. Yeah. Circling back.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
From the bottom of our hearts, we really appreciate you.
This went by so fast.
Absolutely. And just this experience within itself, it's great to see sisterhood touch beyond bounds. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad that we connected in this way. Thank you, Sophia, for connecting us.
Yes, thank you, Sophia.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you, goddess. Isn't she amazing, though?
She's awesome.
I've been girl crushing on her since I think like 2011 when I discovered her or something.
Wow.
And I was like, what is she doing? No, I've been crushing on her since then. So I thank you, Sophia, for bringing me together and bigging out my family because we're cousins now.
Yes, indeed.
We are.
Yes, indeed. This has been so great. I'm sorry, go ahead, Yana.
No, it's just again, just to reiterate, it's always our aim to amplify just another sister's voice and to share in our stories of transformation and our lessons, just the joy. So
I was just looking at the time, my jaw dropped. I'm thinking, did we talk that long? But it seemed like it went so fast.
Yeah. I didn't say the last part. And until next time,
melanate on that.
Yay.
Thank you for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed our chat today. Keep the conversation going by heading to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and leaving us a review.
Have a story of your own to share? Email us at info@melanatedconversations.com or connect with us on social media at Melanated Conversations. Till next time, keep raising your voice.